Okay, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining. This is the Exploratory online seminar number 94. Today, I'd like to present reporting automation with Exploratory. Before getting started, let me introduce myself. My name is Kan Nishida, CEO at Exploratory. Exploratory, we started it 2016 to democratize data science. And since then, we've been building the product called Exploratory, and also we provide this type of seminar and the training to share our knowledge and skills. Our vision is that data-informed decision-making is critical key to make the world better, or even like one's life better. Therefore, what we can do is to democratize data science. So therefore, like we've been building the tool called Exploratory to make it more accessible for various type of data science tasks. Okay, when we said data science, we usually think in this kind of workflow. Usually you have the questions you want to answer, and then you want to use the data to answer the questions or help you answer the question or make the better decisions. In order to do that, like you need to access the data, you need to prepare, clean, and transform the data. We call it data wrangling. And then like you want to visualize or creating the charts so that you can understand the data or the trend and the patterns intuitively by using your eyes. Or you want to do the analytics. You want to use analytics to understand the hidden patterns and the trends that maybe your eyes cannot see, but only like a computer or an algorithm can discover for you. So you go through this process going back and forth, and then you might be able to find useful insights. When you find it, then you want to share that with other members or other stakeholders. So that's the last communication part. The Exploratory makes it easier to do this data access, data wrangling, visualization, analytics, and communication through the modern and simple UI. Okay, so enough about introduction. So let's get started. The main part of this this seminar, Exploratory online seminar number 94. This is a reporting automation with Exploratory. So we get a lot of questions from our Exploratory users, and sometimes the questions about like how to analyze the data, how to use the product, how to use particular methods, and so on. But often ended up like sort of like users want to know that how to create the reports sort of like in a more optimized way or effective way, because their work usually been bombarded or occupied by creating the reports for today, or maybe this week, or maybe this month, right? So in order to get that done, and you can't really go to the next step, which is really like exploring the data or analyzing the data kind of stuff. So in matter of the fact that most of the users, actually, the Exploratory users who are using Exploratory to create the reports. I think that's really the first step, getting up to like data science ladder or whatever you call it. Okay, so today, basically, like based on those experiences, like I wanted to share with you, like how you can actually go, solve these problems with reporting or report creation. So, typical case is, maybe like every week, like a Friday or whatever the day that you have the deadline for creating reports. And then, unfortunately, that type of work can be repeated, or like every week, every month, or every day type of things, right? So the problem with reports creation is that a lot of times are spent on the creating reports, periodically. The worst scenario is maybe like every day. But it's not only that, but also other problems. For example, because of that, you have to spend a lot of time for reporting, creating reports. Then you can't find the time to do what you actually want to do, which is analyzing the data and discover useful insights so that you can improve your business or business decisions. Okay, and then the third one is creation work. This type of the work usually been dumped on the very few limited individuals, sometimes just one person, right? So that becomes a bottleneck because you have other folks demanding the same type of things. Hey, I want this report, I want that report, I want this report to be updated this way or that way, kind of stuff. All go to the same person, but the human, it's unfortunately, it's not a robot, so it's not going to scale, right? So that usually becomes a bottleneck. Therefore, you can't actually have not even like analyzing that, discovering the insights, but just like you can't even produce enough reports that you need to run your business. And then the fourth is that's actually the sort of like a big problem. Many organizations, sometimes you recognize a problem, sometimes you actually close your eyes, pretend like you don't, that doesn't exist, but it actually does, which is like you create a report, but there might be some errors, maybe some numbers are wrong, right? So, and then sometimes you don't even know this for a while until somebody point out like 3 months later, and then it actually might be too late. Okay, so, but we are all humans, we make mistakes. And then if you're creating a report manually by using tools like Excel, that problem and errors happen often. This is not just for like small organization. It's a big corporations, a government, in any type of organization. Always, sometimes you see the headline news that because of that errors in Excel, you ended up like producing completely wrong status of the world, and then that's you can imagine that what problems that can cause, right? So these are the problems, and I want to actually go to like each problem a little bit more detail, and then I want to talk about how the exploratory or moving to exploratory to automate the reporting creation solve these problems. Okay, so typically like you started creating reports. And then maybe, you spend like a Thursday, like 8 hours, the next day, 4 hours. Hey, I ended up spending 12 hours, but I got the report. And if you're talking about just one report, that's actually not too bad. It's okay. Sometimes some work takes time. The problem is that you actually need to do this like every week. If the report is required to be updated every week, maybe like every month, or maybe like every day. Then every time you update or you create a report, you have to end up spending a lot of time. So it gets repeated. And what do you mean? Like, why it takes so long for creating reports? Typically, that's the question that from the people who ask somebody else to create a report. Well, so you have the data, right? And then you create a report, whatever the format could be. Excel, PowerPoint, some kind of reporting format, Word, and whatever that could be. So why it takes so much time? Well, sometimes the data is not in the same sheet or Excel or database or whatever that could be. Some data is actually in one database or one Excel sheet. Another one can be in a different sheet. So you have to actually combine them together so that you can create one chart or one single report, right? So what happens is basically like a lot of like sort of like a data combining the data or joining or merging of the data happens often, and that complicates the process. And typically in Excel, like you use something like a VLOOKUP to create sort of like merging the two data sets or two Excel sheets and stuff. But this is actually kind of complicated process. Okay. And then the second problem, this happens often, is that the data is always not clean. It's dirty. Typical example is, for example, the company names or somebody else's name, the product name, that names are not consistent. It's about the same company, but it happen to be like, ends with corporation or like CORP dot or a group or, different types of names. So you have to make them consistent. It's basically the same name as long as they represent the one single entity. Otherwise, you can't create a report about that particular company comparing against other organizations. Okay. Or sometimes this happens a lot with Excel, that the data you're given comes with, turn out to have like sort of like a columns for the months. So like January column, February column, March column, or something like that. Or maybe sometimes like you have a company name as a column. So whatever that could be. And that type of data, we call it wide data, is not easy to visualize or even like analyze. So what you want to do, you end up needing to do is to transform the data to something called long data. That, so example, you have the months column that has the months information. You have the sales column to have the sales numbers. Okay, this type of data can be called tidy data as well. But whatever the name could be, you need to transform left-hand side top type of data to right-hand side bottom type of data, from wide data to long data. Then it becomes much easier to visualize or even like do a perform calculation and so on. Okay, and then so another one is that creating a calculation. Some cell divided by 4 or divided by another column, or just doing a sum calculation or something like that. That's pretty simple, straightforward. But most of the time, you gotta start adding a more complicated stuff. For example, some of the conditional calculation. If it meets this criteria, then you want to add this number. You want to multiply by this number and so on. So things can easily or quickly complicated. And that's actually kind of a nightmare scenario, especially when you use something like Excel. Okay, and then you end up like needing to produce a lot of charts. Like imagine like you have a PowerPoint reports or whatever, you have to create a bunch of charts. And then like every time you create a chart, or every time you update the data, like you have to reproduce the charts. And so that managing the bunch of charts becomes a nightmare quickly. And not only that, like you have to summarize the data first. So that, for example, if you're using an Excel case, then you can map that summarized data to the chart. So then you have sort of multiple steps to produce the charts, and then you have to manage this manually. So you got to find like where you create the data, like where that data is coming from, which sheet, that type of things. Okay, so creating a report. Initially, you thought it's going to be like, okay, 10 hours and 12 hours, okay, that's it. But then what happened is, hey, can you create that report again, this time with the new data? We got the new data for this week, or we got the new data for this month. Can you create the same report? The people who are asking for this tend to think, hey, you know what? The data is the same. It's the same format, the exact column name. So it shouldn't take much time, right? It's like it takes like maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but can you give me that reports? But then the person who is making this report will be like, oh man, what do I have to do? Because that person created the last report, ended up creating multiple sheets. You remember, you had to merge the data, you have to clean up the data, you might have to summarize the data, you have to create a chart. That means you have to create the summarized data for each chart. So you ended up like a bunch of like sheets, and then you have to go through, hey, like what data needs to be updated type of things. Okay, so you have to basically repeat the things that you have done last time, spending 12 hours, you basically have to do pretty much the same thing again for this new data, even though like the data format is exactly the same. Okay. So then what happened, this is the reason like you ended up like having like 12 hours, ended up like 48 hours for a whole month. And then maybe like, like next month, you're gonna do the same thing again. Okay. And then another thing is then the business side said, hey, you know what? We need to monitor like different types of things. Let's say like we need to monitor customer engagement now. So can you create one report for that? Because we need to monitor every week. And then the report author was like, oh man, like we have to create another report. And then these guys are already asking me to create that like every week. What can I do? Right. So it ended up like so that new report is this like a green. Is representing the time for the new report. So now it started as a 48 hours, now becomes 96 hours, right? If the new report takes about the same amount of time, maybe less time, or maybe more time it takes. It depends. But ended up like you spend all the sudden like 96 hours every month. Well, this becomes a problem because you have only so much time in a month. Right. And then like that, your time fills up quickly with this kind of report creation. Imagine like there's another report request comes, another report request comes, and so on. Right. So then like you join the team of like a data team or data analyst team or data science team, but then you find yourself like creating just reports every single day. Right. So a lot of times being spent on creating reports. The second problem is can't find enough time to analyze the data. That happens a lot, especially you're so excited to join a data team or data science team, and your status is a data scientist, whatever. But then it's okay, you know what? Like I heard that you have to prepare to transform the data, so you need some time in the data preparation. But then you need to create the charts, reports. Yeah, that's part of the task. That's fine, but I really want to do exploratory data analysis. I really want to build a prediction model and so on, right? So this is a sort of like expectation when you join the team. And then soon you discover the reality, which is most of the time doing a data wrangling. Why are you spending so much time on the data wrangling? Well, it turned out you're doing a data wrangling not just for the analysis, mainly for creating the charts or reports. Okay, so a lot of times are spent on preparing and updating reports, or actually preparing the data for the reports or charts. And it can't spend enough time to analyze the data. So that by end of the month, hey, you know what? Like I started thinking like we're gonna spend some time for like analyzing the data, but then like we already in the month ended it, and all I did was to create or produce the reports, and there's no time left for analyzing the data. We get this complaint or complain a lot from our customers. Our customers come to our training or like data science type of training, data science training or booster training, bootcamp training. And then they're so excited. Hey, you know what? Like we can, explore data. We can analyze data. Now we know how to analyze data. They're so excited and going back to their office. And then like we meet like 3 months later, like and they typically said, like we had to spend a lot of time just creating a report every day. So we haven't started analyzing the data. So that's too bad because you have the tool, you have the knowledge, you have the skill to analyze data, but you don't have time. So, but this is a very common problem. The other problem is the bottleneck problem, right? So usually there's one person ended up producing a report. At the beginning it's fine, and then like, what happened is like, oh, that guy's great, so like let's ask that guy to create more reports, and other teams join the request, and then this person start creating more reports, but then somehow creating a report, as you saw, it takes a lot of time for data wrangling and preparation and that kind of stuff. So that knowledge or the skill doesn't really scale. So like the one person ended up producing all the reports, right? So then those people call like typically Excel God, right? I'm sure like any organization, like you can imagine, like there's Excel God. And what the problem is Excel God, as long, this God is great, but this is actually not the real God. It's like Excel God, it's a human, right? So that means it doesn't scale, of course, and it's a black box. Nobody knows what he or she's doing with the Excel, right? We don't even want to know. It's like, okay, sometimes like I want to know, but like the moment I click some cell, like, ooh, that's something that like some other time, right? So it's a black box. And that means it becomes sort of like a crystal ball, right? Like it's whatever comes out from that person like, as a report, you have to believe that numbers. So it's a little tricky situation here. And then the real problem becomes like what that person eventually leave the organization, right? And then all of a sudden everything stops there. And you never know like when, but anything can happen. So what happened? Like that person quits or stop coming to the office. What are you gonna do? Nobody can create that reports because you remember it's a black box, and also things are complicated, so it's not easy to scale. Okay, so then the last problem is the error. Okay, so sometimes the business side finds the problems. Hey, this number doesn't make sense. Are you sure this number is correct? And then you ask that person that who created reports, and then that person has to go back into the Excel and then look, hey, okay, yeah, it seems like wrong, but where this number is coming from? And then you have to look in every single sheet, not just every single sheet, every single cell to find which calculation is causing that problem, right? So it becomes such a hassle. So error can happen because of human, and then but also it's hard to find the root cause when the error is discovered. So that's why this automating the reporting reports creation is critical. And the exploratory is actually, the people think is this is a tool for analyzing the data, exploring the data. Yes, you can do, but also you can automate creating a reports. So that's what I wanted to show, like why exploratory helps you creating, not just creating reports, but automating that process, right? So 4 things. Number 1, the quick and flexible reports creation. 2, automate all the underlying data preparation for reports. And then the 3, schedule. And then the 4, the collaboration. So let's visit each of these. So first, quick and flexible reports creation. So when you say reports creation with exploratory, mainly there's 3 things. You can use a dashboard to create a report. Okay, and in that way, like you can share with others in an interactive format. And then the second is a note. Note is more like kind of typical reports. You have the charts, you can have the comments, text to explain what you find in that chart or in the data type of thing. So note can be used as a report, and that's a kind of typical case. And then the third is a chart. And a lot of people use actually the exploratory for producing charts. And then they take screenshots and then copy and paste in the PowerPoints or like other type of the documents. Okay, so dashboard is that like you can create a dashboard flexibly and easily. You can bring in like a lot of various types of contents, like numbers and text and analytics and chart and so on. And then like you have the row layout and column layout. You can have both different layouts in the same dashboard as well. So you can flexibly design. And then you can use a drag and drop to adjust the size and layout and so on. So it's intuitive and then easy to do. This is actually the advantage of that UI tool. Okay, another thing is a note. Note is that like some format like this, you can have the image and text and a hyperlink and a YouTube video. And of course, you can bring in the charts. So you can really create sort of like papers or like reports and stuff. Okay, and then you can use the Markdown to flexibly format, but also quickly as you write. And then you can bring various contents, including image and video and so on, into the same note. Okay, and then another thing is like the chart. So you can create a chart. It has a lot of different types of charts you can create to visualize not just the aggregated or summarized data, but also the data variance or uncertainty by using error bar, or time series data, or even text data by using the word cloud. And then also, you can create these charts at any data wrangling steps that I'm going to actually talk about the data wrangling step in a minute. So that means in the same data at the different stages, like before aggregation, after aggregation, you can create a chart for that. Okay, so that's very flexible option. And then once you create a chart, typically, like you just take the screenshot, whatever the tool you have, the Mac, you can use like a function for whatever, but also the export button, then you click on it and then you can export the chart. Then this way, like you can actually adjust some like resolutions and size and so on. So that might be convenient for some some folks. Another thing is there's a personalization. So typically, like you might have like a so like a color standard that like you want to use your company's color or something like that. You can create your custom color palette and make that as a default. So like every chart you create, you don't even have to change the color palette. You use the one that you define, right? So that, and also another thing is maybe like font size and so on. You might have the company standard, so you can actually set it as a system setting so that those can be used as a default. Okay. And the second part is automate the old underlying data preparation. So this is really the key part of the post automation. So how are you going to do it? So basically in exploratory, like when you import the data, then typically you want to clean up the data, transform the data, prepare the data, and so on. You can access various type of data wrangling operations from the column header menu. And you click on it, and then you get the UI for each task. And then the UI is pretty intuitive enough so that you don't have to know like something like you don't have to go to school to understand something like that. You just click on it and then follow the UI to do data wrangling operations. Okay. And then what's cool about that is like every single task or like a thing you do will be automatically recorded and organized at the right-hand side as steps. So you can create a calculation, you can create a filter, and you can summarize the data. You can merge with another data set. Now you have 4 steps are going to be created at the right-hand side in that order. You can change the order later time by drag and drop as well, but all the data wrangling steps will be recorded and managed on the right-hand side. That means you can follow how that data is being created or prepared or calculated by step. You can go back to any step, and as you have seen, you can create a chart at each step as well. So now, why that's important? Because if the business asks you, hey, you remember the last report? I got the new data. Can you create the same one except with this new data? Then what happens is all you need to do is just come back Exploratory, and then there's a re-import button at the top. When you click on it, then it will re-import that data. If that data is coming from like somewhere like in the cloud or the database or whatever, all you need to do is just click on that button. And then that data is not just getting imported, but also go through that data wrangling pipeline that it's the steps, that automatically recorded steps, and then go through that step. So like a calculation, filter, aggregating, merging, or data, text data cleaning, all that stuff will be automatically processed. Okay. But what happened, like, if I have I've got a new data or something like that, right? So when you get the new data, then if you click on that re-import button, the re-importing button is getting the data from the same place. So if you are accessing a data set, database or a cloud data or something like that, then usually the data source, the data source gets updated. So it actually makes sense, click re-importing the data, then you get the updated data. But if you are just dealing with Excel data, then you click on import data, you get that same data, right? So in that case, you can actually click on that step, and then you can change the data pointer. So for example, when you click on that step, then you can switch that data. Okay, so for example, like you started with the November data, and then like you change that to December. You can do that as well. But most of the time, you want to actually keep the original data. Then in that case, you copy, then change that data file reference. Then now you have the 2 data sets. One is pointing to the original. Second one is now pointing to the new data. Okay, and then you change that data and then come back. And then what happens is like that now new data gets imported and then go through the same data wrangling pipeline. Okay. Or what happened? Like, hey, I started with Excel data, then now this guy is asking to get that Excel data at different data source. Let's say like a Google Drive or like let's say like Azure Store or like Amazon S3 or something like that. No problem. You can actually switch the data source. So you can not only switching that data source and data reference, the file, you can actually switch the data source from used to be file to the database, or used to be database to files, and vice versa. Okay. Or another thing is, well, right-hand side data wrangling steps, that's a kind of like can be independent steps, right? So that what that means is that you can just copy and paste to another data frame. So just imagine like you have that data created, right? Now like you imported a new file because somebody asked you, I gave it to you. You just imported it by drag and drop, whatever, into Exploratory. then without the steps, right? That part is you just import the data. Now you can copy from the another data set, data frame, and then paste that, whatever the steps, maybe it's 3 steps or all the steps, paste it on the new data frame. What will happen is that the same step will be processed on top of the new data. Okay, so that's pretty convenient. And then that's like a kind of, sort of like, think of it, these steps are sort of like the script. And behind the scenes, actually the script, but it's basically the reproducible steps, a reproducible script, if you will. Okay, and then you can basically create a chart for different steps. That means once the original or the source data gets updated, all the charts that are branched off from any steps or created for any steps gets automatically updated. You don't have to do anything. You just take Exploratory takes care of it. And not only that, you remember like you have the dashboard or like a note. Either way, you can import or embed the charts. That means dashboard and report also gets automatically updated the moment you click the re-import button. Okay, so let's take a look at that like a little quickly. Here, I have the chart in here with this opportunity data frame. And then this data is coming from the Salesforce. Okay, so here, this is the data source step. But then let's take a look at the data here. So originally, data was like this, and I went through a couple of data wrangling steps. Okay, separating a column, creating calculation, clean up the text data, and then doing a filter and so on. Okay, so now if I go to chart, this chart was created against the data at this step, step 5, after the filter data. Okay, if I go to the different chart, this data was created before doing this filter. Okay, so you can create, you don't have to prepare the data for each chart. You just create a chart at different stages of the data. Okay, and then now, after this, and basically, once the data is updated to source, in this case, the Salesforce data, so like think of it as more like this cloud data, think of it as like a database. So somehow the system updated the data, all you need to do is just clicking on this re-import button. Then all the charts coming out created for these steps will be updated automatically. But you create, so if you just got, you want to take the screenshot and paste it in the PowerPoint or something like that, that's, your work is done, right? Or you can create a dashboard or reports. For example, I just created some dashboard here. Okay. And then this is the edit UI. And then like, I can go to the run button. And then like, once I click the re-import button, all the data, by the way, this dashboard is referencing to a couple of data. So for example, Twitter data, and also this opportunity Salesforce data, and also global sales data. This is probably coming from Excel. This access log data, this is coming from Amazon S3, and different data sources. Okay, and then you can go to each data frame to update the data, or you can click on this button and then click on Run button. This will get the new data from the Salesforce and Excel and S3 and Twitter, so on. And then automatically run all these steps for each data. Whatever the steps require for these charts to produce these charts, and then update the dashboard output as well automatically. Okay, so that's basically like a reproducibility that we have for like a data wrangling step. And this is why you see on the right-hand side, this like a data wrangling step is very important, because you can reproduce these wrangling steps and also corresponding charts automatically. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. And then the last two parts, the scheduling and the collaboration. Okay, the scheduling is basically like you can publish the dashboard or a chart or analytics or notes or even data itself to the Exploratory server. Okay, and then once you publish that, then you can schedule it. The report, not just importing the data, but also processing all the data wrangling steps, and also regenerating the charts. Okay, and then when you publish it, basically like same thing. Let me just go back in here. This one is already published. Chart level, you can publish that, but also dashboard level, you can publish that. This has already been published. So let's take a look what that means. So like if I go, here is a, I'm gonna open the dashboard here. Okay, and then this dashboard with like parameters included, so you can you can share it with others, and then the person who was shared can use this not just take a look at this report, but also interact with the data as well. But also in this time, at this time, most important thing is here the scheduling. So I can actually set the schedule. Hey, you know what? Like I want this one to every week at a certain time. And then you can check on this subscribe notification or email. What this is going to do is it will send you the email with a screenshot of this dashboard. So you don't even have to open a browser. You can just actually check these numbers and charts and so on in your email as well. So that is really the, what's happening. But also what's happening though is that once you set this up, what's going to happen is like if this one is sourcing the data from the Salesforce or S3 or database or remote Excel file or whatever, it will go to the source, collect the data, whatever the data is required, and then go through the data wrangling step, whatever the data wrangling steps are required to produce these charts, and then creating this, updating that dashboard. It's all automatic. Okay. So once that's done, then you can really automate that report creation process. Okay. And another thing is that, so the easiest way to start with, you use the shared cloud, which is our exploratory.io. Okay, so you can publish your chart, dashboard, notes, whatever, to our Exploratory server, and then set up the scheduling. Then it will do that whole reports creation automatically. But sometimes, like hey, you know what? Like we are not comfortable, like sharing the data. Your server, we have a very strict rule or for our organization, or something like that. You have two choices. One is a private cloud, which is like we host the Exploratory server for you specifically, and you can have like an IP address limitation, restriction, and so on. So you can create that, not just sharing with others, but your own Exploratory server instance, but managed by us. So you don't have to have like IT folks to take care of the server kind of stuff. Another one is that like if you have a team or people who can take care of like a hosting, setting up the server, then you can use the on-prem version of Exploratory server that you can install whatever the server or the cloud service that you have. Okay, so that's the most secure because everything's inside your firewall, and then you are the only one who can access to it. Okay, but various options, and then you can use the Exploratory server to schedule the report creation. Okay, the last part is a collaboration. So Exploratory is really a collaborative data science platform. So that means you can create a team, right? And then you can add team members. And then once you create a team, then you can actually click on this publish button. Then you can publish the project again at the shared server or your private hosted server or your on-prem server, whatever that could be, you can publish the project. And then what happens is once you publish, right, then your team member will get notified, hey, this project gets published. So that means the team members can download the project by using Exploratory. And then once they download, then they can open that project, right? And then the imported project, for example, like you can import the project from the publish projects bottom, okay? And then like you can see like, what are the updates, including this project and so on. And then you can open the project, and it may be like a bunch of data frames or, and a bunch of charts created under the data frames and dashboard and so on. But the important thing is you can see the data wrangling step at the right-hand side. Therefore, like how this data has been prepared. Okay, it's all transparent. You can move the mouse on top of each step to see what's actually happening at each step. Or you can click on one of the steps, then open the UI and see like what's happening, how to get that data, what is each step doing. Okay, so that way you can not only reproduce the whole report creation in your exploratory desktop, but also you can see like how other people do and did, and then discover like where things went wrong, where requires some updates and so on, very easy through the power of UI. Okay, so by doing so, you can automate the reports creation. What we have looked at is that basically by using Exploratory, you can create the reports quick and flexible. Second, you can automate all the underlying data preparation due to the data wrangling steps being managed automatically. Number three is the scheduling. By using Exploratory Server, you can completely automate the whole data preparation, processing, chart creation, report output generation. You can automate all of that. And then the fourth, I think to me, this is the most really the important piece is the collaboration. By doing the collaboration, you remember the problem, the bottleneck, like report creation should never be dedicated to one single person or even like few individuals. It should be that anybody should be able to update the report. So that way you can you can scale the report creation process. Okay, so that means typically like if you're using like a spreadsheet tool or Excel tool or something like that, maybe like you might be spending like 48 hours in a month, right? Because you had to repeat. But using Exploratory, that time is going to be super minimum. First, it takes less time to create a report, but also from the second week on, it's almost zero. Maybe the time you need is like open Exploratory and click that button or something like that. Okay. So we have a bunch of customers that have been successfully migrated to the Exploratory from Excel to automate their existing report creation. I want to introduce a couple of examples. So one is this is a sportswear maker. Anybody know this company? Like probably you are wearing the shirts when you go running. But that R&D department, they used to create reports with Excel. Now they have migrated to Exploratory. So before they had to spend 2 hours for creating reports every time they do the product testing. And that happens almost like a daily. Now they have to spend only 10 minutes for the report creation. So that's a maximum reduce of the time and labor. And then before, due to the time constraints, they could only summarize the data, right? And then they try to analyze the data, but they're actually analyzing or maybe like visualizing the only summarized data. But now they're actually doing the analysis on the raw data or the bottom data, okay, lowest level of the data, so they can find a lot of patterns and trends from that data. Okay, so now another thing is the speed it took for creating reports and the quality will vary among the members. So it depends who created reports. It's, quality is different, time is different. Now they are actually collaboratively creating reports, and then they created a sort of like a process of so that anybody can create a report with the same quality standard. Okay. The second use case is the clinical service provider, and in that provide companies corporate finance department. Same case, they used to use Excel. Now they're using Exploratory to automate the report creation. After an employee who used to create the reports left the company, so it turned out that some executive guy was assigned for creating the reports. Okay. That's like the last thing you want to do. But now, by using Exploratory, now anybody can create a report and then maintain the reports. So because of the whole thing of the UI, so like it's much easier for anybody to actually understand and create the reports. So now like that report creation task was assigned to a group of people. Okay, so the next time somebody left the company, they will have backups, right? So another thing is that that executive, poor executive, had to spend about 20 hours every month. Now, after migrating Exploratory, they're spending 20 minutes for creating the same kind of report. So 20 hours to 20 minutes. That's again a huge reduction of time and labor. And last part is that now they couldn't do the much analysis because they had to create a report. That was all they could do. Now they're doing running. This is what they always wanted to do, which is like a performance analysis for every employee. So they're actually doing that every month. And because you automate, by automating report creation, you can actually make time, right, for analysis. The last example, this is a consulting service provider, but it's specialized in more like organizational engagement, employee engagement improvement. They had to spend 30 hours to create a report for each client, each survey project. But now they spend like 5 hours for each client. Again, a lot of like a reduction of creating the reports. This is not like a repeating report. This is like they had to create a new set of reports for new clients or new project. But you spend 30 hours. Now they had to spend only 5 hours. And then because of the creating, spending 30 hours manually, so they ended up like making some errors that caused by humans. But now they created a project as a template. So any type new project, new survey data comes in, they start with a project, and then they replace the source data. Sometimes the Excel files, sometimes like from the cloud. They just switch that data source to the new data. And then after that, they don't have to do anything most of the time. So less human involved, that means less errors. And then now they always wanted to do data analysis, but now because much reduction of the time, so they have more time for creating reports. This type of the consulting service provider, this is actually critical because providing what value in that report makes a huge difference, right? Because you want to provide value to the customers so that maybe you can refer to other clients, or you can have more projects and so on. You can't expect such things by providing the same summarized data, right? So you always want to provide more values by finding the useful insights for improving their business, right? So now like they can actually spend more time for doing something like that, for providing the values to their customers. So now they're doing the analysis of the multivariate analysis, factor analysis, and so on. So they're pretty happy about that. Okay, so these are some use cases, successful use cases from our customers. Okay, and to summarize, many organizations spend hours and weeks or months for repetitive work. I think very less productive work, and that's really the problem. By automating existing report creation works with Exploratory, you can make your work more productive, better quality, and most importantly, more fun, right? Like you can focus on more productive stuff rather than the repetitive stuff. So by automating existing reports creation work, you can reduce the amount of time spent on reports creation dramatically and prevent errors caused by humans and spend more time on analyze and discover useful insights to improve business. And by collaborating with others with the Exploratory platform, you can make reports creation process more transparent, not black box anymore. And avoid concentrating works on Superman, instead make everybody to prepare any reports quickly, whenever they're needed. And that's really the reports creation, sort of a democratization on reports creation. And find the problems if discovered for calculations and data preparation, and quickly fix them in a collaborative way. Okay, so that's it for today. So we covered like report automation, really like how you can use Exploratory to automate existing report creation. So dramatically down from like in some case 30 hours to 30 minutes. then that means you basically created 30 hours for your team. What are you going to do with the 30 hours? That's when you want to do what you originally wanted to do, which is to analyze the data and discover useful insight to improve your business and productivity. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for watching. But before getting finished, make sure go to our website. Under the Learn, there's a training and a seminar menu. And then in that page, you can see like future upcoming seminars, but also the past seminar recording as well. So every time we do this type of the seminar, we record and publish. So you can check out like all the other seminar contents we have done in the past. And also, if you are Exploratory users, go to under the Learn, you can check how to tutorials, or that's like instruction, like a note-based instruction, or how to video, like that's a short video for introducing various features of Exploratory. And also, we have a chart gallery page that introduces various techniques of using various chart features. Okay. That's it for today. If you have any questions or future requests or anything, please reach out to me at kan@exploratory.io. And also we do Twitter, or now it's X, whatever you call it. We have Exploratory Data. And that's where we make announcements about the product and this type of the seminars and training and so on. And also, another important thing is we are starting the training, restarting. We used to do that before, but we are restarting the training as well. So you go to our website, exploratory.io, under Learn Training Seminars. And then here, there's a training, Data Science Booster training coming up. We are planning to do in November. Okay, and this is like a 5 days training, and each day we do the 2 hours. Depends on different time zone, and then so in total 10 hours. And also we have like a homework assignment as an exercise as well. Okay, and then right now like we have like an early bird, so please take advantage of that if you're interested in, and then you can check out the detail what type of things we're gonna do. Okay, and this training, we're gonna use Exploratory. So mostly like kind of like a hands-on base. I'm gonna explain some of the data science or statistical data analysis methods, but also try to make it more sort of like interactive, and then you can also use your hands and then interacting with the data to understand different types of theory and skills and methods and so on. Okay. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining today's seminar. If you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, hope you're going to have a great rest of the week, and hope to see you next week. Bye.